Welcome to everyone. Thank you for being here. And Drew and I are based in Southern California. I'm based in San Diego. And some of you are familiar with Learning Upgrade. We're going to review exactly what Learning Upgrade is. And Drew is going to give you the details of the challenge. But why did we create a Learning Upgrade challenge? The reason we did is because as part of the XPRIZE Communities competition, we found out that if we blend together online and smartphone learning with adult basic education, with educators like all of you, the combination delivers fantastic results. And so everyone was so disappointed when the communities competition ended. How do we keep this going? So we decided to create an ongoing competition. It's going to be every semester, every 4 months, January to April, then May to August, September to December. And all of you can participate. There's going to be prizes and excitement. And we're just really excited about it. And I'm going to get into the details, but I just want everyone to know that we're putting a link, which I just put in the chat window. And it takes 60 seconds to sign up for the challenge. You can click on that link while we're talking and sign up and get going. All right. So as we all know, there's 36 million low literate adults in America. It's a monumental challenge to reach all of them. And so we're focused on scaling up. How do we help you to serve more adults and to have faster results? Only 5% of adults are in adult education. How do we reach the other 95%? And the solution, which we found out in the XPRIZE competition, is smartphones. Why smartphones? Because low-income people are now at around 90% penetration of smartphones and closing in on 100%. But even more importantly, low-income people depend on their smartphones even more than you and me. And the reason is they don't tend to have Wi-Fi, cable modems, laptops, desktops at home. Their smartphone is their only connection to the internet. And so if we can deliver learning through the smartphone and monitor and track that progress and integrate it into adult basic education, then we can scale up to meet the needs of so many more people. So Drew's going to get into the details of the challenge. I'll come back later to talk about how people are using it around the country. And like I said, we have a link in the chat window. You can literally sign up right now while we're talking. All right, thanks. Drew?
Thanks, Vinod. So I just want to start out with, how does the challenge work? And so as Vinod was talking about, we learned a lot from the communities competition of the XPRIZE and how we can scale up to meet the needs of these 36 million adult learners. And so with the Learning Upgrade Challenge, our goal is to provide a long-term solution that provides incentives for accomplishment with the tool of Learning Upgrade. And so I just want to quickly give you a top-down view of what it looks like. So the challenges are set up. This one is going to be the COABE Learning Upgrade Challenge. And that challenge is going to be supported by providers. So adult education providers are a part of this challenge, and they're going to compete to see who can get the most hours, lessons completed on Learning Upgrade, and the learners are going to be the ones logging those hours. So you can see, as the COABE challenge, you guys are going to be the instructors, a part of these adult education providers, and then the learners at each one of your site will be the end user of Learning Upgrade. They'll be making progress in English and math, and then all of their progress is going to be what qualifies the sites and then them as individuals for these prizes. And so that's really the key. And in real time, everything is going to be built around these semester cycles. And so this webinar is really step number 1 in that semester cycle, that's adding providers and training instructors. As part of this webinar, I'm going to be getting into how you onboard learners and how those learners can complete lessons. As an instructor, once these learners start, completing lessons, making progress, then what you'll want to do is track and monitor their activity. You can see all of their success. You can see lessons where they're struggling. You can dial in using our lesson lists and alignments. We have in-depth reports, so you can track and monitor all of their progress. And then that fourth step is the end, and that's celebrating student success. So when we look at this semester cycle, this semester starting now in February, and then you are all going to have 3 full months to work on this. So it's going to be February, March, and April. And at the end of April, on April 30, that's going to be the end of this semester cycle. And so at the end of this semester cycle, we'll take a look at our leaderboards. We'll take a look at the highest achieving providers. We'll be looking at, the average hour per active student. And that way, huge programs don't have an advantage of those of you that may be at smaller programs. And then we'll also be looking at things like the students, the individual students with hours and lessons. We want to reward our top instructors. So if there's an instructor that's doing a great job, then we also want to take a look at personal impact stories. And that's something that's really important to us at Learning Upgrade. It's something that's hugely important to COABE is, looking at those personal impact stories. Let's take a look at, how this challenge changed someone's life. An individual learner, maybe they weren't, didn't make the most growth on a lesson. Maybe they ended up not passing their GED story, but, the narrative around what they're doing, the amount of effort, we really want to take that into consideration and make sure we're rewarding those learners as well. And then the second thing I wanted to mention about the semester cycle is anybody that's never used Learning Upgrade before, you qualify for completely free Learning Upgrade access. For those of you that have a Learning Upgrade license, you can continue working on your Learning Upgrade and we can enter you into the challenge. Your current license and all of your progress that takes part in this time period, February to April, will still qualify you to earn these prizes. And so let's just quickly talk about the prizes. I mentioned them earlier, but just, some of these prize categories, we want to look at the top programs, top instructors at the individual learner level, those that have the highest number of hours, lessons, and then certificates. I'll talk about certificates in a bit, but you earn a Learning Upgrade certificate when you've completed an entire course, a 60-lesson course. The personal impact stories. And then the last one is we're going to be making some funds available, some mobile learning funds. So, one of the big questions, okay, well, after this semester, then what? And so, after the semester challenge, you have the ability to, purchase licenses, but then there's also going to be mobile learning funds available. For those of you that might not have the funds at your, program to buy Learning Upgrade, we want to make sure those of you that have had a lot of success getting learners on and active will have funds available to then pay for that continuation. And so that's another one of those prizes that'll be available there. So as Vinod mentioned, it's really quick and easy to join the challenge. All you need to do is click that link in the chat and you'll see this page here, and then you'll be able to fill in the information below to join. If you're not able to click that link, don't worry about it. You can just go to learningupgrade.com. Click on pilot request, and on our pilot request form, there's a drop down that says, are you a part of a Learning Upgrade challenge? Make sure you select COABE, and that's what's going to lock you in for that free access for the new programs there. And then you can just fill out that form. So 2 options, one on the pilot request form, and then the other is using the link in the chat. So now that we've introduced the challenge, I wanted to talk about, what is Learning Upgrade? And so the key for today is, how the COABE Learning Upgrade Challenge can drive learner growth. And that's really the key for us here at Learning Upgrade is how can we help you drive learner growth? And so let me just introduce Learning Upgrade for those of you that might not be familiar. Learning Upgrade is really 2 parts. And so there's the Learning Upgrade app, and then there's the Learning Upgrade LMS. And that's for the instructors, admins, teachers. The Learning Upgrade app is what your students will be using. So the Learning Upgrade app, as you can see, there's 21 courses currently. And then the 22nd course, we're going to be launching at the COABE conference in April. And that's our brand new course. That's going to be digital literacy. So if you are going to be attending the conference in Baltimore, we're going to have a talk just for digital literacy. Make sure to stop by our talk, and you can learn all about that. Right now, we have these 21 math and English courses. It's over 1,000 lessons. It's available on the web. It's available on smartphones and tablets. And so if you have an iOS device, your learners can just go to the App Store and download it. If they have an Android device, they can go to the Google Play Store and download Learning Upgrade. And then they can also access Learning Upgrade on the web. They just go to learningupgrade.com and click Login. Now, the nice thing is they can also, use multiple devices. So once they have a username and password, they can use their computer lab at your, education provider site, complete lessons. Then they can go home and they can work on their smartphone or tablet. You as an instructor can now log into the LMS and track all of that activity. You can view session data, and then you can also see when and where they're using each device. And then all of these lessons are aligned to CCRS, CASAS, and TABE. And we have alignment tables that we'll be able to share links to in the chat as well. So we'll be able to talk about some case-specific validation with some of our literacy deployment models. Vinod will cover that a little bit later in the webinar. But the big one, since we talked about the communities competition, is the Adult Literacy X Prize here. And so for those of you that didn't follow the Adult Literacy X Prize, it was a competition put forth by the Barbara Bush Foundation and X Prize to see if a company could create an app that would get measurable gains in adult ed. And so we entered the competition, and this was 2 years plus now, and we found out last year that we were the grand prize winner. And so in order to find the winner, we all had our apps put forth in this field test. It was a 16-month test with 12,000 adult learners. And those learners, were at a pre-test, they used the CASAS test. So it was a CASAS 210 or below. And, the goal was to get the greatest gains for that pre and post over the span of a year. And, winning that was important. But we also got to see, in their data that the gains that the learners made were greater than what they would have seen with just a year of classroom study. And that was by looking at the learners at the same sites that just did classroom study versus the ones that were also using Learning Upgrade. And so since then, we've been growing a lot in adult ed. Hundreds of adult ed providers are now using Learning Upgrade and have joined over the last year. And we're excited to make it available to all of the COABE members as well. And so I'm just going to play a quick introduction video. This is going to be the first video that your learners see when they log in. And it just briefly introduces the app mechanics, how they earn certificates, how they move from one lesson to the next. And so I'm just going to hit play here, and you can watch this short video.
Welcome to Learning Upgrade, where you can learn English and math the fun way. The lessons are filled with music, video, games, and rewards. You can start at your level and keep moving up at your own pace. You start on the Courses screen. Select the highlighted course to start. In the Lessons screen, you start on Lesson 1. When you earn 100 points with over 75% correct, you can move up to the next lesson. You will earn a bronze medal for lessons over 75%, a silver for over 90%, and a gold for over 95%. When all of your lessons are complete, you will earn a bronze certificate. You can review to move up to a silver and gold certificate. Then you can move on up to the next course. Ready to learn English and math the fun way? Let's get started.
Okay, so let's take a look at the app. When learners log in, they're going to see the Courses screen here. So in the Courses screen, they'll see our English courses, our math courses. Then they'll also see our skill courses. So our pre-algebra, GED math, high-set math, soon to come digital literacy. Now, the reason they see all of the courses here, even if they're only enrolled in one, is to encourage something that we've started calling binge learning. And so when your learners start out, they might be starting out at a low level. We work with a lot of, refugee centers, with a lot of pre-literate adults. So they might be starting out on that English 1, English K. If they're working in math, math K, math 1, and they get to see that path in front of them. It's really similar to when you tune into Netflix and you're getting into a new show and you can see all the seasons, so that you're not just investing in a show that got canceled next year. You say, okay, this is where I am. This is where I want to go. And Learning Upgrade has that path for me. I might be starting here on English 1, but I know if I put the time in, eventually I'm going to be at that NRS level 5 at English 5, and I'm going to be able to make those advancements in my life and my career with this one app. So it's really important to display that path to success for them. They get to see all of the courses that are available. It'll only be illuminating the course that they're currently in. But as they make progress, each one of the courses they complete will light up. And so that's binge learning. I'll be able to show you some reports that really tie into that for us. It's more than just seeing the map. When we look at the data for the learners, before the smartphone app and the tablet app, all of our time was really tied to when they had access to computers. And so that would be in a computer lab, it would be at a library, and then a few of our learners might have a computer at home. But we saw the majority of our activity from that 9 a.m. until 4 or 5 p.m. window. That would be 90% of the time on task spent on Learning Upgrade. And over the last 2 or 3 years, it's just been incredible to see that distribution shift. And so now what we're seeing is a time period that we never thought possible would be a hot time, which is that 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And so we used to view, the Learning Upgrade app as a way to get on a smartphone that every adult learner has, and they can use Learning Upgrade, purely as an education tool. And that's something that they're doing. It's a great education tool. But the thing that we didn't realize is that it would become a competitor for some of the other things they're doing. A competitor for social media. It's a competitor for just, maybe news. And so we find a lot of our learners in that 10 o'clock to 2 binge learning through, an hour and a half to 2 hours of content. And so instead of binge watching something on YouTube or Netflix or endlessly scrolling through a Facebook or Instagram feed, now they're going on to Learning Upgrade and improving their English and math skills. And so binge learning is something that was never possible before. But with the validated lessons that we have, your learners will now have access to, this English and math curriculum anytime that they have a free moment in their day. So let's take a look at one of the courses. As I mentioned earlier and in the video, every single Learning Upgrade course is 60 lessons. So if you're here, you can click on this E5, English 5, and now you're going to see all 60 lessons for English 5. The learner's going to start out on lesson 1, and then they're going to work their way through to lesson 60. Lesson 60 is a final challenge. It's a cumulative test of the 59 lessons that they worked on before, and it's the only timed lesson on the entire course. Much like the courses screen, we lay it all out for them here. It's just like a subway map. They get to see all the courses that are coming ahead, and they can see that path that they're taking. As you saw in the video, if they get a 75% to 89, they're going to get a bronze. If they get a 90 to 95, they'll get a silver. And then if they get a 95 to 100, they'll get a gold. And those medals will show for each lesson. Once they've completed all of the lessons, that's when they earn that certificate. If there's bronze or silver lessons remaining once they finished all 60, a voice will come on, say, congratulations for your certificate. Now let's go back and repeat those other lessons to mastery and move them up to gold. And so that's the way the lessons work there. Within the lessons, the key here is learner engagement. And this is really what separates Learning Upgrade in an app format from, say, a workbook or worksheets. If you're working on, volume of a rectangular prism in a book or in a worksheet, you'll get some instructions on 1 or 2 pages, and then you might get multiple choice questions or some open-ended questions. And if you're lucky as a student, you'll get the, the odd question answers in the back. When you're working on volume of a rectangular prism in Learning Upgrade, you'll have the instruction at the beginning, and then you'll start answering questions. but you'll see the way the formula is laid out. All of the numbers are going to show, and you'll be able to drag and drop. Green is going to display when it's correct. You'll see red when it's incorrect. So visually, you'll get to know once you, answer incorrectly. The voice will come on and tell you it's incorrect. It'll walk you through how to answer the question correctly. It'll show you the correct formula. And then you'll get to see those numbers fly in to where they're supposed to be. So there isn't a lot of mystery in why you got it wrong. We want to make sure that your learners know exactly what they did incorrectly, and then most importantly, how to answer the next question correctly. And so that's that learner engagement. Then you'll see on the left, this is the instruction that each one of our lessons start with. So again, it's animated, there's songs, there's narration, and it's very different than just reading, this is how you find, a table of contents in a paragraph format. As I mentioned earlier, Learning Upgrade is available everywhere. So you can download the app on a smartphone or tablet, or you can access Learning Upgrade on via the web. And so if you have Chromebooks, if you have MacBooks, you have PCs, essentially any web-enabled device, your learners will be able to access their Learning Upgrade account. So once your learners have Learning Upgrade installed and they're completing lessons, then you as an instructor will have access to the Learning Upgrade LMS. And with your teacher account, you'll be able to log in and monitor your site activity in real time. If you have an admin monitoring multiple sites, that admin can track multiple sites in real time, dive in and view and see how individual teachers are doing, and run course reports for whatever they need. You can track sessions. You can see a device breakdown. So if you have a situation where you want to see how many hours are being spent on mobile devices versus computers, you can look at that. And then you can also view in-class versus out-of-class activity. So if you have a situation where your learners are working in a computer lab, and then they're also working at home, but you need to report hours, say just for in-class activity, you can view in-class versus out-of-class reports to make sure that your reporting is accurate. So now let's talk about how to get started as a provider. So for those of you that haven't, if you logged in late, there is a link in the chat box that you can click to get started. Just click that link, fill out the form, and you'll be entered into the challenge. If you already have a Learning Upgrade account, feel free to fill out that link and just let us know, and we can add your existing account into the challenge as well. We talked about this semester cycle earlier, but I just wanted to clarify, today is that step number 1. And so now walking forward, what I want to focus on are steps number 2 and 3. How do you onboard learners? How do you get them to complete lessons? And that's the most important thing in this challenge. The more active learners you have and the more lessons they're completing, the more you'll be able to win prizes. And so, get signed up. And once you do sign up, you'll be receiving an email from me. And in that email, it'll have the instructions for getting started. And so you'll get a challenge license email, and it'll walk you through your student self-enrollment. And that's really the focus of this step number 2. So what I want to show you is how quick and easy it is to get your learners onboarded. Our Learning Upgrade platform is based around student self-enrollment. You'll be issued a single self-enrollment code. Your learners will be able to log in, enter that 7-digit code, and they'll instantly be added to your class, and you'll be able to start tracking activity right away. So when you fill out this form, I'll be sending you this email. You'll see your 7-digit class code in that top line, but what you'll want to do is click on the PDF class code sheet. When you click on the PDF class code sheet, you'll get this one-pager. And with this one-pager, you'll have the instructions for your learners. It'll tell them how to download the app, and then it'll walk them through the steps I'm about to show you. So step number 1 is download the app. And for those of you that are going to be doing this in a group, internally we call these onboarding parties. And so if you have an opportunity to have learners in a classroom setting, if you have something in the evenings, even if it's a digital onboarding party, it really helps to have, learners walk through this with you. And the key is making sure that step number one is taken care of before your onboarding party or before your meeting. And, you know, we used to think it would be internet access that would be the issue. That's not the case anymore. Everybody has data. They know how to find Wi-Fi hotspots. A lot of schools are wired now. The big one is just account access. People forget their passwords. They don't know, you know, what my Google Play password is, what's my Apple ID. And so that tends to be the issue. You know, maybe one of their children has it, maybe a spouse has it, maybe they just forgot. And so if we can get our learners to download the app ahead of time, that takes care of 90% of our problems right away. And then during our onboarding party, we can focus on the important stuff. So second step in the onboarding party, you know, your learners are showing up with the app installed, and if not, they're installing it then, is they launch the app. So you launch the app on your smartphone or tablet, and this will be the first screen that you see. And so your learners will click Get Started. After clicking Get Started, they'll have the option to select English or Math. This is just to select their first course. They can add additional courses at any time. So in this situation, we're going to select English, and now we're going to see our course selection screen. So you have three options as a learner. Number one is you can click Placement, and when you click Placement, the first thing you'll do is take a Learning Upgrade assessment. We'll assess your learner, and we'll enroll them in the appropriate course. If you know your learners are starting from the very beginning, they can just click Beginning. They'll be enrolled in our very first lesson and start from there. If you'd like to directly enroll into one of our courses, we have some helpful guides. And so the first one is going to be our CASAS and TABE alignment. So if you've done a different assessment, okay, I know my learner is a CASAS 215, then you can say, okay, English Upgrade 3, and just select English Upgrade 3 based on our tables. We also have lesson lists available for those of you that want to see every single one of those 60 lessons for all of our courses. And then we have our CCRS alignments. So if you're working on, you know, Anchor 10, read proficiently at a level, and then I can say, okay, English Upgrade 4, for Anchor 10, they have lesson 10, 20, 21, and you can follow those there. So that's the key here. So that's the step of selecting a course. 90% of our learners just take the placement and we'll enroll them in the appropriate course. For others, they can start at the beginning or directly enroll. Once they've selected a course, they can enter their first name and last name. And in this class code field to the right, that's where they're going to enter the class code from your guide. So on your self-enrollment guide, you'll see class code, you'll get a 7-digit code. And then when they're enrolling, they'll enter that 7-digit code into that class code field. That's what's going to make sure that this account gets linked to your account. The only field that's not going to be entered, and this is voluntary, is that student ID, email, or phone. And so if you'd like to track your learners with a different ID, they can enter that in. That's voluntary. Or if you'd like them to enter an email or phone so that you can contact them at a later time, that's an option. But the only three requirements are going to be first name, last name, and class code to get them into your class. Once they've done that, we're going to show them their username, password, and school ID. And this is important. You know, we're going to remember it on their device that they're logging in with, but they need to either screenshot this or write it down in case they lose their phone or in case they want to log in on another device. So maybe they're logging in on a computer at school, or they're logging in or they're sharing a phone at home. If they have their username, password, and school ID, they can access their account everywhere. After seeing this screen, we're going to show them the courses screen. And so this is the courses screen I mentioned. The course they're enrolled in, English Upgrade 2, is going to show in yellow. All the other ones are going to be grayed out. So I can now see my path here. I'm in English Upgrade 2. I can click on that and start completing lessons, but I can see what's ahead of me. I have 3, 4, and 5. Now, let's say you did a placement test and your learner was in a rush or didn't have their coffee that morning, wasn't feeling that great, and they could have performed better on the placement. They're in English 2, but they probably should be in 3. Your learners can click on any of the grayed out lessons. They can see the lesson map and then add those courses. And so that's why when you start out on English, if you'd also like to add a math course, you can always go ahead and do that. Now in your onboarding party, the next step we like to have every single site take is to make sure that your learners complete lessons then and there. It's not enough to just get to this stage where they have their account and they're enrolled in a course. For anyone that's ever started a new season of a TV show on Netflix, you know that sometimes it takes a few episodes to get into it. Every now and again, you'll start a show and the pilot you're 50-50 on, but by episode 2, 3, or 4, you're hooked. And at that point, you're binge watching through the season. And it can be similar for some learners on Learning Upgrade. They start out on that first lesson. Our goal is to have them complete 2 or 3 lessons. If we can get learners completing 1, 2, or 3 lessons in that first season, that binge learning begins and they're going to be off to the races. And all you need to do as an instructor at that point is track their progress. And so that's important in the onboarding party as well. If you can get them to complete a few lessons and now they're familiar with logging in, they have their account and they've completed a few lessons, and so they know the format. So once they're done, completing their lessons, they can, close the app or click log out. And then if they wanted to log in on another device, they have their account info. So the next time they open it up, they just click the blue login button. And on the blue login screen, they'll be asked for their username, password, and school ID. They'll log in and be right back where they started, and they can pick up where they left off. So now I want to cover the motivating and tracking learners. So this is going to be important for the challenge. Once you have your onboarding party, your learners have their accounts, they get started, they're completing lessons. Now you as an instructor will be able to log in and track all this. So we'll be having webinars in the future, in-depth looks at reporting, tracking. Once our sites are completing activity, our learners are making progress, then I want to do another webinar where everybody can get online, and I want to show you the best practices for tracking and monitoring your students. For today, I want to show you the best practices for a new account. For somebody just getting started, how do I track and monitor that initial activity? So the first thing you'll want to do, and again, these instructions are going to be in that email I send you. So I'll be showing you visuals, but you'll be getting these instructions in your getting started email as well. So your learners have completed the first 2 or 3 lessons in your onboarding party. You're going to want to pull up your student monitor. So in the student monitor, we'll show you the student names, and then we'll show you the abbreviation for the course that they're in. For this example, everybody's in English 1. English 1 has 60 lessons like all of the other courses. So you'll see those lessons displayed from left to right. So there'll be 60 lessons there. You'll see the learners that have earned a certificate. You can click on those and print those off. But what I want you to focus on is the gold, silver, bronze, and then red lessons. And so what you can do is hover over any one of those lessons and see how your student did. So you'll hover over, this is on short vowels, and they got 100%, and they attempted it 1 time. As instructors, your time is short. So the first thing you'll want to do when you log into this report is just take a look and say, okay, where are the reds? You'll see you have a few reds here, and what you can do is hover over the reds and get that real-time activity. If they only attempted it 1 time and they're close to that 75%, we don't have to do anything. That learner will work through that. What you want to keep an eye out for is if your learner has attempted it multiple times and still has a low score. In that case, you'll want to work with that learner one-on-one, or you'll want to look at their individual course report and get a little more data on that. That's number 1, is looking at red lessons. The second thing you'll want to quickly eyeball for is if you see a lot of bronze or a learner that's falling behind. So this third from bottom, you'll see that even though the learner is making progress, every lesson they get through is just at bronze. There's very few silver and gold. And so that's a case where you might want to move a learner back and have them in a course that's before the one that they're in. And so that's the student monitor. Now, if you see that they're struggling on English 1, you can pull up individual course reports for any one of these. We'll give you content area scores. And similar to the shorthand on this, where you want to look for red and then lots of bronze, when you're looking at this individualized course report, you'll want to take a quick look at the graph and just take a look and see if there's any valleys that haven't been filled in. The way this graph works is our initial scores will show in blue, and then in orange, you'll see the high score. So for this example, every single valley has been filled in. A learner may have struggled in an area, but then they went back and played that lesson again and moved the score up. If you see this and the valleys are low and they haven't been filled in, it's an opportunity to dive in a little deeper and look at these tables and see how much time they're spending for minutes played, the number of attempts, and their high scores. And that really lets you dive in and see exactly how they're doing on each lesson. So that's what you'll want to do for your quickly monitoring your class and your individual students. You can also dive in a little deeper. And there's a link to this in the email as well, but this is the student progress report by date. And this is going to give you information similar to the student monitor, but now in a table format. And the student progress report by date also lets you set a start and an end date. And that lets you look at the activity that takes place in a certain time parameter. So if you just want to look at a weekend or a week, in this case, most of you are going to want to look at this semester. So you can go from the time you started Learning Upgrade until April 30 and see how much time on task your learners have spent to make progress towards the prizes on the challenge. By default, we're going to show you each course on a row, but you can also group these by content area. So if you just want to say, okay, group by English, group by math, or you can say group by all. And then for a student like Isaac that's in 3 separate courses, we'll just give you one number, which is the total number of time spent on Learning Upgrade. You'll have the option to select those there. And so that's the student progress report by date. You can also look at our student session report. And this is important if you want to see when that activity is taking place, that binge learning. This is, an eye-opener for a lot of our instructors that are used to having their learners complete activity and work on things in class time. When they look at this report, a lot of the times they're surprised when their learners are actually making progress and learning. And in a lot of the times, it's that, again, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. that they'll see, wow, this is an Android device. They're working on their smartphone before they go to bed. It'll say iOS for iPhones. You can tell Linux for Chromebooks, Mac, and PC as well. But with this student session report, you can really dive in, get subtotals, and this one you can set a start and an end date as well. And that lets you see how people are doing there. The final one is the in-class versus out-of-class. And that just lets you see, for your learners, when they're completing their activity. You'll see the total hours, and then you'll see when they're working out of their classroom versus in the classroom. The last one for our 4 steps in the semester cycle is just celebrating student success. And so that's going to be done, internally as a site when you're printing off certificates. Maybe you're looking at that session data and congratulating learners for working hard at 11 p.m. And then just, congratulating learners when they're at the top of your leaderboards for completing a high number of hours and lessons. And then externally, from the challenge, again, we'll have the mobile learning funds. We're going to have personal impact stories and then prizes for top programs, instructors, and students. And so now I'm going to have Vinod come back on to talk about some of our literacy deployment models. COABE has a huge, member group, and you represent the best of adult ed. You cover pretty much every single group. And so I just want to give you some ideas on how, different literacy programs around the United States are deploying Learning Upgrade. And so Vinod's going to walk you through that.
Thanks, Drew. So there's so many different types of programs out there, all of you probably from very different programs. And so I want to give you a little bit of a feel for that. The first is adult schools and community colleges. Basically when you have a blended classroom where you have a bunch of learners coming in several times a week, that model is basically blended learning. What happens is an instructor will have an onboarding party in their class, get the learners to put the app on their phones the day before, come in all ready, and basically get onboarded with the code as Drew showed you. And then the instructor will use whole class lessons that we offer, which you can project onto a whiteboard and do the whole lesson with the whole class with the music and games. And then the instructor will monitor progress and blend together her own work in class with the work that's done at home. Another model is a library literacy or tutor-based model. San Diego Public Library is a good example of this. They have so many people who come in, qualify for tutoring, but have to wait 2, 3, 4 months for a tutor. So what they do now is as soon as they come in the first time, they get onboarded to Learning Upgrade, straight in using the code on their phone, one-on-one, by an assessor, and then they get going with the program. And by the time they get matched with the tutor, sometimes they finished 1 or 2 courses, the tutor gets all kinds of data, reports that show exactly where the weaknesses and strengths are with this learner. And so combining together a tutor-based program and the smartphone learning has been extremely helpful, especially since you can onboard a learner at a library or a community center just with their phone. You don't even need computers. Just have them pull out their phone, type your class code in, onboard them, and they can learn. Another model is a family learning model. Drew has had a lot of success here in California with migrant learning, with farm workers. We've been doing family learning models with K-12 schools. The idea here is that you give a separate account for the parents, the mom, the dad, and for each of the children. So you can imagine a family of 5 with 5 accounts, and they can use the parents' smartphones, or they can use teenager smartphones. And the wonderful thing about this is that the whole family together is working. And we have Somali refugees where the children are far ahead of the parents because they're born here or have been going to school, and they help their parents use the app, and the children are on higher levels. So when you're doing the blending, here's the key. You want to get a lot of time on task at home. Drew mentioned that 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning window. So what you want to do is get a lot of time on task at home by motivating them, talking about their progress. We've seen, as you can see here on the slide with Sweetwater Adult Education, CASAS gains in 10 weeks of as much as 16 points, averaging 7.8 points, CASAS gain at Sweetwater. And the reason is that they were doing 10 lessons a week sometimes, 4 hours a week sometimes on their mobile app. That's the whole key. I want to talk about the Umi Learning Center in San Diego. That's what you're seeing here. When you have a community center, a church, a homeless shelter, a YMCA, any kind of community-based organization, even if they've never done adult ed before, you can suddenly say, I'm going to serve this population. And if you have an adult ed organization, like Queens Public Library went out to all the local community-based organizations and worked with them. The interesting thing here is that Somali refugees were able to use their phones, and one learner called Sudio actually did 350 hours on our program and went all the way from Math 1 and English 1, barely reading, to algebra and GED math. She's going to be taking the GED next month, and she spent 18 months making all that progress. I think the key here is to think outside the box and to really try new approaches to onboard learners, including the ones that you already have, but also expanding out to the community and onboarding learners that wouldn't traditionally come in to your adult ed center. This is a learner from San Diego Public Library who came in to a tutor, but also did, I think, over 100 hours of work on her phone at home. I also want to talk about workforce. This is a hotel in Carlsbad, California. It's a chain of hotels. And what they've done is through Adult Ed, they've onboarded their workers, their housekeepers particularly, in this program. And they're mostly ESL, mostly Spanish speakers. It's been wonderful because they do the work at home, but they get onboarded at work and the company tracks their progress. They've already seen big gains in terms of being able to speak with the hotel guests, being able to read labels of products and instructions, being able to communicate with supervisors. So that's a little idea of what can be done on the workforce side. Okay, I'll turn it back to Drew. Basically, we'll put up the link for joining the challenge one more time. I've got a couple of questions. One is, do you have any data on how this works in rural communities or rural Alaska? Well, interestingly enough, we have a deployment over the last 10 years in Galena, Alaska.
iGrad Academy.
iGrad Academy in Galena, Alaska. And so we've been working with them for many, many years. One of the reasons they work with us is because of how remote they are. And they've been serving kind of the rural community around Galena. Partly because there's a lack of instructors once you get out into the rural communities. So this way, you can onboard learners and then they can use it from their homes, from their phones. I would think we have something similar with Native American tribes. We also have a lot of rural areas in Canada in the north that are using it. I don't see any other exact question. One of the questions was, if I put a learner on, can I switch them out? And so yes, if you have a learning upgrade license, let's say I have 50 student license, you can take a student off if they leave the program, put another student on at any time. It just takes seconds. So you're not limited to, you know, who you put on. You can take off, put on, take off, put on, all throughout the one-year license if you purchase a license. So yeah, Drew just put up the link to the challenge sign up. If you haven't used Learning Upgrade before, you will get a no-cost license from us right away. So make sure you sign up either on our website, COABE challenge form, or the pilot request form. And if you're coming to COABE in Baltimore, please stop by. We're gonna have 4 different talks, and we're gonna be launching digital literacy, our new course there. One of the questions was, could the math be in Spanish? We don't have the math instruction itself in Spanish, but because of the format of the lessons, which is talking and terminology, we tend to have a lot of success with ESL students with our math program. It's been really popular with ESL. So combined with the English lessons and the math, it's something that you should try with your Spanish speakers to see how successful it is. Okay, Pamela says, see you in Baltimore. We look forward to it. Hopefully you get started now, and then you'll have some stories to share with us at our talks in Baltimore. That'll be wonderful. If you have any more questions, you can type them into the chat window or the question and answer. Otherwise, we're gonna wrap up. Drew, do you have any more to add?
Yeah, that's it. That's all I'm seeing for the chat. Yeah, again, if there's any other questions that you have, feel free to enter them in the chat. If they pop up at a later time, my email's here. It's just Drew, D-R-E-W, @learningupgrade.com. You will be getting, I think everybody will be getting an email from COABE with a recording. And then I've sent over the PowerPoint, the slides for that. So thank you, Pamela. And then again, anybody that would like to sign up, you can use the link in the chat or just click on the pilot request at learningupgrade.com, and we'd be more than happy to get you started.